Thanks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Relief Valve Podcast. Just have to get everything rolling here. So we're let's look at the latest polls here to start the show off. We've got presidential race running even in Wisconsin, even in Nevada, even in Pennsylvania, even in Michigan, which is just it's huge to see this because in my last show, if you were watching that, you can see these polls. Here's polls ending October 24th, and so yesterday. And it's by likely voters and then registered voters, or the RVs, and they're only polling about 1,300 people, between 1,000 and 1,300. This is not a proper sampling of the voting base of where everyone's leaning. So when you take a look at these polls, one way or another, Democrats are up, Republicans are up, whatever you feel, you're taking it with a grain of salt. If you're seeing Democrat-led states running even, Trump's ahead. Because there's no way that it's this close in a place like Pennsylvania or Michigan where Comrade Kamala should be winning. So if that seeing is even, Trump's ahead over there, and she, at the bare minimum, she's struggling to get into a place that should be a very easy win for her. North Carolina, Republican +1. Georgia, Republican +2. For Senate races, we've got Nebraska, Republican +1. Ohio, Democrat +2. Wisconsin, Democrat +3. Texas, Republican +3. Pennsylvania, Democrat +4. And Michigan, D4. So you're seeing in the presidential election, they're going for Trump. In Senate elections, the people are split between the person that they want for office. Now, after what the Democrats have done and continue to do to this country, how anyone can vote Democrat is absolutely beyond me. They hate this country. They hate the taxpayers. They want to absolutely flip this country upside down on its head and destroy it. And people still vote Democrat thinking that the Democrats are going to do something beneficial for you. I don't know where you're getting this, or just because you don't like a Republican, so you'll screw over all of your fellow taxpayers and people that live in this nation by wasting your vote with a Democrat. It's ridiculous to me. So who's ahead in national presidential polls? Let's take a look at that. So we've got right now, allegedly Harris 48.1, Trump 46.4. And again, that's only from like 1,000 people. That is not the pulse of the entire country. So these aren't super accurate. When you go over to the poly market in the betting here, I'm going to update it, but we've got Trump up 2.7% to 65.4, with Harris being 34.7%, down 2.8%. I'll bring that and see if there's any change at all. Trump's down slightly, 64.4, and Kamala's not really going anywhere at 35.4. Here's Poly Market's voting map here with, a lot of red here. A lot of people voting and putting their money where their mouth is in voting Trump in taking all of these states. See, in Colorado, she's way up. Colorado's a bunch of Democrat morons. New Mexico's a bunch of Democrat morons. Obviously, California. And, he's up in Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wisconsin, South Dakota, North Dakota. And again, this is betting, but it's reflective of how the people feel. So I like to show these in comparison next to each other because, honestly, I think that this map can be just as indicative of what's going on here as 538's latest polls are showing. So let's go to some breaking news that just happened here. There are several organizations and people who are saying they're not going to endorse Kamala. As you know, the Teamsters have already said they're not endorsing Kamala. We, as the workers, I'm a Teamster, we are not endorsing Kamala. We're going for Trump. And when some in cases of the Teamsters say that the locals are pushing for Kamala, that's the higher up suits, the business agents and the secretary treasurer that are pushing for her, pushing the Democrat agenda. The workers are not doing that. We're voting whatever fucking way we feel like. We don't give a fuck what the suits think. So in following with this, as more people that are leaving the Kamala camp, Washington Post becomes a second major U.S. newspaper to decline to endorse a presidential candidate. Less than 2 weeks before Election Day, the Washington Post said Friday it would not endorse a candidate for president in this year's tightly contested race and would avoid doing so in the future, a decision immediately condemned by a former executive editor and one that the current publisher insisted was consistent with the values of the Post that has always stood for. In an article posted on the front of its website, the Post, reporting on its inner workings, also quoted anonymous sources within the publication as saying that an endorsement of Kamala Harris over Donald Trump has been written but not published. Those sources told the Post reporters that the company's owner, billionaire Jeff Bezos, made the decision. So she's even losing Jeff Bezos. The publisher of the Post, Will Lewis, wrote in a column that the decision was actually a return to traditional the paper had years ago of not endorsing candidates. He said it reflected the paper's faith in our readers' ability to make up their own minds. We recognize that this will be read in a range of ways, including as a tacit endorsement of one candidate, or as a condemnation of another, or as an abdication of responsibility. That is inevitable, Lewis wrote. We don't see it that way. We see it as consistent with the values that the Post has always stood for, and we hope for in a leader. Character and courage in the service to the American ethic, veneration for the rule of law, and respect for human freedom in all its what do they say? All its aspects. So the Post isn't the only one going this route. Lewis cited the Post's history in writing about the decision. According to him, the Post only started regularly endorsing candidates for president when it backed Jimmy Carter in '76. The Post said the decision had roiled many on the opinion staff, which operates independently from the Post newsroom staff and are a bunch of left-wing fucking cunts, which is known commonly in the industry as a church-state separation between those who report the news and those who write the opinion. The Post move comes the same week that the Los Angeles Times, another left-wing source, announced a similar decision, which triggered the resignations of its editorial page editor and 2 members of the editorial board. The lefties having a cry. In that instance, the Times owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, insisted he had not censored the editorial board, which had planned to endorse Harris. As an owner, I'm on the editorial board, and I shared with our editors that maybe this year we have a column, a page, 2 pages if we want, of all the pros and all the cons, and let the readers decide. Soon Shun said in an interview Thursday with Spectrum News. He said he feared endorsing a candidate would add to the country's division. Many American newspapers have been dropping editorial endorsements in recent years. That's in large part because at the time readership's been dwindling. They don't want to give remaining subscribers and new customers a reason to get mad and cancel their subscriptions. And that's smart on their part because they give in to their left-wing idiot staffs that just bully everyone and take over the place. And then they push out this, oh yeah, we're going for the Democrat and all that. And then they lose customers, they lose readers, or they lose viewers. And, obviously this isn't helping them do anything, and they're starting to wake up to this. Paper is kind of a dying thing, and even these left-wing shows that they have are losing their viewership base because they're so biasly towards the left-wing and the Democrats that you're not getting accurate news. You're getting lies, and you're getting their twisted tale of what's going on. So they're finally learning, and good. A lot of people are jumping off the Kamala train because she sucks. So in her, she had this disaster with the CNN. The panel roast Kamala Harris for failing to set out her vision after the PA town hall, and this was an absolute mess. I'm going to see if I can play some video or clips here, or we'll find them. All right, let this commercial go for a second here. I'll see if this loads up.
And that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one. There wasn't one. Some more of her personality and her sort of character questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there.
So I'm going to get some...
I'm so excited the brand new set of...
Shut the fuck up. Okay, so Vice President Kamala Harris' performance at CNN's Wednesday town hall with Pennsylvania swing voters, and I'll play you some clips for it. I'm not going to read you a whole gigantic section. She left the more than hour-long forum with verbose and evasive answers to queries posed by on-the-fence residents. What I'm hearing from people who I've been talking to, if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that, CNN anchor Dana Bash said immediately after the event outside Philadelphia. Having said that, at any time that she can be in front of an audience and interacting with voters is a win as far as her campaign goes, and they're very happy about that. She shouldn't be, because she sucked at it. Veteran Democratic operative David Axelrod, the chief strategist on Barack Obama's presidential campaign, said, "The things that would concern me is when she doesn't want to answer a question. Her habit is to kind of go to word salad city." One was on Israel. Anderson Cooper asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of that related to the question he was asking. Axelrod argued that Harris, 60 years old, also missed an opportunity when asked about immigration. She would acknowledge no concerns about any of the administration's policies, and that's a mistake, he said. Sometimes you have to concede things, and she didn't concede much. She just didn't want to go there, CNN host Abby Phillips said on the post-event panel, pointing out the answers were light on policy. The bleak reviews came after Cooper, who moderated the town hall, forcefully pushed Harris on policy matters, which was surprising to see because CNN is a Democrat mouthpiece. And to really see them getting frustrated and starting to give up on Kamala is really a tell. At times, uncomfortably asking her the same question repeatedly when she failed to give a straight answer. National Democrats have told the Post that they're concerned about Harris's standing less than 2 weeks ahead of Election Day on November 5th, as former President Donald Trump leads in polling averages of all 7 major battleground states. That's why I said that 538 is not being properly accurate of what's going on in these battleground states. I've heard that it's a good poll for what's going on with these elections, but her being even with him here is not representative of what I'm hearing, is that Trump is leading in all of these places. Is it a huge lead? I don't think so, but it is a lead, yes, over her in places where she should be taking it easily. National Democrats have told the Post that they're concerned about Harris's standing less than 2 weeks ahead of Election Day on November 5th, as former President Donald Trump leads in polling averages of all 7 major battleground states. In one of the most discussed exchanges, Harris insisted that she and retiring President Biden had done the right thing on the U.S.-Mexico border policy, which they let millions upon millions of illegals in. That's absolutely not the right thing. And now she's trying to reverse course on that because that's hurting her campaign. Harris defended her service as Biden's point person on reducing illegal immigration, which instead hit record highs for the first 3 years of her role, as Cooper pressed her to admit that Biden's June order to restrict the release of asylum seekers who enter the U.S. illegally came too late. The exchange began when a Republican Drexel University student, who said he was leaning towards supporting Harris, asked her to describe the benefits and subsidies she would offer to new immigrants, a query the Veep entirely sidestepped before Cooper picked up the line of questioning. America's immigration system is broken and it needs to be fixed, and has been broken for a long time, Harris deflected, defaulting to familiar campaign talking points before blaming Trump for helping crush a bipartisan bill this year the conservatives said do too little to restrict the release of illegal immigrants who sought asylum after crossing the border. Now, this has been a big Democrat talking point right here, talking about how, well, we as Democrats tried to get a bill out there to help with the border, and it was Republicans that shot it down. They're the ones that don't want real change. The border bill was extremely weak. It still allowed illegals to come in. There was a cap number on ports of entry, which was like 5,000 a day or a week, something ridiculous. And then once they got to that number, they would shut down the points and not allow anyone through. It was a ridiculous, absolutely weak bill that didn't actually stop the border crisis. It was some half-assed solutions that never really worked, and it ultimately still allowed illegals to come into the country. That's the bill the Democrats are toting as their big solution that the Republicans shot down. They shot it down because it sucked and it didn't do anything. And all it did was, in addition to that, it sent more judges and more border security officers over to the port locations in order to more quickly transition the illegals that were coming into the country. Because they thought that's what the problem was, is that we couldn't get them in front of a judge and get their information and process them quickly enough. That was the problem. Not that they were even showing up and should be turned away. It's that we need to be quicker about processing them and getting them into the system and get them a court date for which they'll never show up for because they're going to disappear in the interior of the United States. So it was absolutely ridiculous. Let me see here. We got the show page here because we're live streaming on YouTube as well. I want to see if I can just get the must-watch moments and analysis. It's a half hour. We don't have to do all that. Let's get some of it. No, I don't want to answer a question. Fuck off.
And welcome. We are live from Chester Township, Pennsylvania, Delaware County, one of the critical counties around Philadelphia that will help determine who wins the White House. Welcome to CNN's presidential town hall with the Democratic nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris. I'm Anderson Cooper. Now, in this room, we have assembled a group of 32 Pennsylvania voters who say they are still undecided or persuadable. All of them are registered to vote. Some cast votes for Joe Biden in 2020, others for Donald Trump. Some didn't vote at all, and for some, this is their first election. Many are leaning right now to one candidate or another, but they all say they have yet to make their final choice. Now, we found these voters working with a nonpartisan research firm, as well as business and religious groups, universities, and other civic organizations. These voters are asking their own questions tonight, selected by CNN to cover a variety of topics. You may see them holding a piece of paper when they're asking their question. It has their question on it. That is a question they have come up with. It has not been edited in any way by CNN. We also invited former President Donald Trump to participate in a town hall or a debate. He declined. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President Kamala Harris. Vice President, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks. You have a mic right here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Thanks so much for being with us. We're going to get to the audience in just a second. I want to start by asking you, though, for weeks you have been calling Donald Trump unstable, unhinged. You've called him dangerous. You've quoted General Milley recently, who called him a fascist. Today, you quoted General Kelly,
Which is funny. General Milley is a traitor. He was the general that was one of the Joint Chiefs when Trump was in office, who said that if he felt like Trump was doing things he shouldn't be doing, he would call China and their generals and give them the heads up. So this guy decided what's right and wrong, even though he answers to the president. The guy's a traitor piece of shit that should be executed. And he's the one here being cited saying that Trump is unfit for office and out of control.
Who said that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler.
Yeah.
But there are tens of millions of Americans right now who have heard all those things and they don't buy it, or even if they do,
Right, 'cause it's
they're
lies.
still going to vote for Donald Trump.
That's why we
He's
don't buy it.
arguably more popular now than ever. You have 13 days to go. What do you say to those voters to convince them? Because some of them are in this room.
Sure, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here. And you could be doing a number of other things with your time. So this really is proof that we love our country. People are engaged, Anderson, and really want to talk about the issues. And so the issue that you raise, yes, I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and
Increasingly unstable. Their sources for this are at an event where they had a medical emergency. He stopped the event and just played music and sang with the people. They're calling that he lost a thing and he was mentally unstable. No, he was being respectful of the elderly person that had a stroke or had a medical issue and was being tended to. The other one they were claiming is that he just stopped talking and was walking around or doing something, and that wasn't the case either. Again, it was another similar situation. But what's really interesting about these leftists claiming that he's too old, unfit, and unstable is exactly what Dementia Joe was from day one of coming in as president of the United States, and you didn't hear not one of their voices. In fact, they did the exact opposite. They said, I've never met a more competent guy. Behind the scenes, when I sit down and have a meeting with him, he is on the ball. He's on top of everything. This guy knows what he's doing. He's not suffering from dementia. Right up to the point. They push that lie. Right up to the point where he had the debate with Trump and he fell apart. He looked like he was looking for aliens in the sky and he was going to walk off the stage. He didn't know where the hell he was. And finally, the proof was in the pudding. It was 100% undeniable. This guy's brain was oatmeal and he was incapable of doing his job. But they pushed this lie all the way through to the near end. They pushed it as far. The message was, don't believe your lying eyes, that Dementia Joe can't do the job and he's gone. Believe all of us Democrats who are saying, this guy's totally in control. I've never met another guy that's more in control. All of the ridiculous bullshit. And then finally they couldn't deny it anymore. Now they're trying to spin it. And they're saying, well, Trump's too old. And it looks like maybe he's suffering from dementia and yada yada. There was something else that just came out on Newsbreak where it said there was this group of, and I'm going to have to find this. I had it saved before and I had an issue with the computer and I lost it. But again, one of those bullshit lists signed by 51 professionals that tell you that they believe that Trump is suffering from dementia and he's a threat to democracy. He won't be able to serve in office. You remember those lists, like the 50 doctors that signed the one that said COVID shots were safe, and the other 30 FBI agents who signed the list that said the Russia hoax was 100% true. I mean, we all love those lists that all the left-wing sellouts and Democrat sellouts sign to say that Trump is bad and that people like Kamala and Joe are really good. They're really on top of things and they know what they're doing. Absolutely ridiculous.
Unfit to serve. And I don't necessarily think that everyone has heard what you and I have heard repeatedly, which is the people who know Donald Trump best, the people who worked with him in the White House, in the Situation Room, in the Oval Office, all Republicans, by the way, who served in his administration, his former chief of staff, his national security advisor, former secretaries of defense, and his vice president have all called him unfit and dangerous. They have said explicitly he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. They have said he should never again serve as president of the United States. We know that is why Mike Pence is not running with him again, why the job was empty. And then today we learned that John Kelly, a 4-star Marine general, who was his longest serving chief of staff, gave an interview recently in the last 2 weeks of this election, talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is. And I think one has to think about, why would someone who served with him, who is not political, a 4-star Marine general, why is he telling the American people now?
He's not political,
and frankly, I think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people. Understand what could happen if Donald Trump were back in the White House. And this time, we must take very seriously those folks who knew him best and who were career people are not going to be there to hold him back.
Career scumbags.
At least before, there were folks who we know what he would say, but they would restrain him. Imagine now Donald Trump in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. He who has openly admired dictators, said he would be a dictator on day one. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said he is a fascist to the core. So I think that when the American people reflect, especially those who are undecided, on who you should listen to, don't take my word for it. In fact, go online and listen to John Kelly, his voice, talking about what he thinks of Donald Trump 2 weeks before the election, because I think we all know, to your point, Anderson, it is close, but there are undecided voters who clearly, by being here, have an open mind, want to talk in a way that is grounded in issues and fact. And when they hear these facts, I think it compels a lot of people to be concerned about the future of our country with Donald Trump at the lead.
You've quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Democrats are fascists.
And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted. Again, look at their careers.
Not by bitches like you. Trusted sources. What has the corrupt Biden regime done so far to the American people? They've sent the Department of Justice against parents who were protesting at local town halls and for genderqueer books in their schools. They sent them after them. They've sent them after pro-lifers who stood outside an abortion clinic and prayed. Haven't said a word, just prayed. They've arrested them. They've threatened American citizens. Of anyone, they've called us all that support Trump deplorables, a threat to the United States, and action has to be taken against them. And then I'm going to read you something where they have very quietly passed a rule within the Department of Defense, the DoD, to be allowed to take military intervention domestically against American citizens based on who you vote for or who you're supporting. Like basically against us Trump supporters or conservatives. I'm going to get into this after that. So who are the fascists that are currently in office? The Democratic Party are the fascists. They're the ones telling you what you can and cannot say. They're the ones telling you that you don't have the right to raise your kids. The government and the school will raise your kids and trans your kids if necessary. They're the ones that are taking everyone's rights away. Saying, well, you can't own this type of gun. That's a military-style gun. You can't have that gun. The Founding Fathers never wanted that. They won by using every available weapon that was there. And they never wanted to take that away from anyone. The Democrats want to. That's the reason in whatever state you're in, it's so hard to own a weapon. Where I am, you're only allowed to have a magazine with 10 rounds. So that way, if I were to go crazy, it takes me longer to reload while I'm fighting back against the government or doing something. I should have zero limits. I should have a 1,000,000 round clip. Whatever the fuck I want. I should be able to own a cannon and a battleship. There's nothing in our Constitution that says there needs to be a limitation on weapons. But the Democrats want limitations on weapons. They're the fascists because the more you're armed, the more you can't fight back against them when that time comes.
These are not people, with the exception, I think, of only Mike Pence. These were not politicians. These are career people who have served in the highest roles in national security, who have served as generals in our military, who are highly respected. Talking about the person who would be commander-in-chief, not to mention what we know and what they've told us about how he talks about the military, servicemen and women.
Okay, so
referring to them as suckers and losers. He himself has said he would terminate.
Shut up, you
bring relief.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Vice President.
Right, and again, behind the seal of the President of the United States, no one. Standing behind the seal of the President of the United States of America should be in that position saying they want to terminate the Constitution of the United States.
This is Annalise Keene. She's from Philadelphia. She works as a fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity. She's registered with no party affiliation. She says she's a Democrat. She's leaning toward voting for you, but says she's yet to make her final decision in part because of the conflict in the Middle East. Annalise?
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Vice President.
Good evening.
My question is, as president, what would you do to ensure not another Palestinian dies due to bombs being funded by U.S. tax dollars?
Another terrorist
reporter. I will say, and I think this is to your point, far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. It's unconscionable. And we are now at a place where with Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief to the Palestinian people, and work toward a two-state solution.
Excuse me. If all of those hostages were lesbian basketball players, they'd already be back by now. But because they were dual Israeli-American citizens, the corrupt Biden regime has been dragging their feet. A quarter to half of of them are already dead, with more being killed by Hamas and by Hezbollah as time goes on. They have no serious intent to bring the hostages home. What they need to do is let Israel do its job and wipe out terrorism. Anyone with a functioning brain should be aware that they're fighting terrorism. The Democrats don't want to fight terrorism. They want to make deals with terrorists.
Where Israel and the Palestinians in equal measure have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination, and the safety that they so rightly deserve.
What do you say to voters who are thinking about supporting a third-party candidate or staying on the couch, not voting at all because of this issue?
Listen, I am not going to deny the strong feelings that people have. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died and been killed. And I know people and have talked with people. So I appreciate that. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care about our democracy and not having a president of the United States who admires dictators and is a fascist. They also care about the fact that we need practical, common sense solutions from a leader who is willing to work across the aisle on behalf of the American people and not themselves. They want a president who cares about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body, understanding that we're not trying to change anyone's belief, but let's not have the government telling women what to do with their body.
I want you to meet Beth Sandberg. She's a realtor, a mom of 4 from Bella Cynwyd, Pennsylvania. She's a registered Democrat, says she's undecided because of concerns about anti-Semitism. Beth?
Couldn't figure it out.
For God's sake. Sorry, commercials. Give me one sec. Bear with me, folks.
Hi, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Thank
Beth.
you for remembering we need to bring the hostages home.
Of course.
The rise of anti-Semitism and violence from anti-Semitism has risen greatly on college campuses and on our city streets in the last year. How would you combat this growing trend and protect our young adults?
Thank you, Beth. You are right, and I will say that we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism. It is something that we have to be honest about and we have to deal with. As Attorney General, I actually published a hate crimes report on a regular basis, and anti-Semitism was among the highest forms of hate in our country, and this was before October 7. And we know what we've seen since. Part of what we've got to do is talk with people so that they understand what are the tropes, what are the roots of what we are seeing, so that we can actually have people be more understanding. We need to have laws in place that make those who would commit crimes on behalf of anti-Semitism and hate, that they pay a serious consequence. We need to have the deterrence so that doesn't happen.
So
we
here
need
comes
to
the word
ensure
salad
that
of,
college
I don't
students
have a plan on what to do.
are safe in their school and feel safe to be able to go to class. But I'm going to tell you what doesn't help. Again, I invite you to listen and go online to listen to John Kelly, the former chief of staff of Donald Trump, who has told us, Donald Trump said, why aren't my generals like those of Hitler's? Like Hitler.
He never said that.
Who has
The staff that
referred
worked with him and were
several
there said he
times.
never
We've
said
heard
it.
the reports for years.
This is just
Do you
shit
believe Donald Trump is anti-Semitic?
the left made up.
I believe Donald Trump is a danger to the well-being and security of America.
He has said that he's casting himself as a protector of Israel. Do you believe you would be more pro-Israel than Donald Trump?
I believe that Donald Trump is dangerous. I believe that
Trump. She doesn't want to answer the question. Would Hitler be a protector of Israel? But yet they turn around and are hypocritical of their own statement by having to admit that he is going to defend Israel, and then her answer is, well, he's dangerous. That's not what he asked you, dummy.
have a president of the United States who has said to his generals who work for him because he is commander-in-chief. These conversations, I assume many of them took place in the Oval Office. And if the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, is saying to his generals, in essence...
Okay, let's get rid of her shit ranting.
I'm taking 4 of my esteemed colleagues and you.
Vice President Kamala Harris may have just had her worst performance yet. I know there have been some shocking performances in recent weeks. Now she's finally started doing some tough interviews, but this performance at CNN's town hall has to be one of her worst performances of the campaign so far.
What weaknesses do you bring to the table and how do you plan to overcome them while you're in office?
That's a great question, Joe. Well, I am certainly not perfect, so let's start there. And
crazy bitch.
I think that perhaps a weakness, some would say, but I actually think it's a strength, is I really do value having a team of very smart people around me who bring to my decision-making process,
Being so perfect, and that's
different
one of my
perspectives.
How
My
wonderful
team
I
will
am.
tell you I am constantly saying, let's kick the tire on that. Let's kick the tires on it.
The tire, that's fun.
Look, you may like Kamala Harris, but her skills really fall short when it comes to speaking off script to an audience. Now, the presidential hopeful took part in CNN's town hall in Pennsylvania on Wednesday, which was moderated by Anderson Cooper. And you be the judge if you think this answer was convincing.
Some voters, though, might ask, you've been in the White House for 4 years, you were vice president, not the president, but why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Bingo.
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done, that haven't been done, but need to be done.
Need to do more?
Kamala Harris was asked again the obvious question, how will her administration be different? Something she still can't communicate effectively.
I represent a new generation of leadership on a number of issues and believe that we have to actually take new approaches. For example, what we talked about in terms of housing. My experience that leads to that priority includes what I did to take on the big banks around the foreclosure crisis when I brought billions of dollars to homeowners that were the subject of predatory lending. I know what homeownership means to the American people, not to mention what it meant to my mother, who worked very hard and saved up so that by the time I was a teenager, she was able to buy our first home. I bring to it my experience actually taking care of my mother when she was sick, and it was, as it turned out, dying from cancer. And so I know what it means and have the experience of taking care of an elderly relative, and I have raised children. And so I bring to my priorities and will, as president, a new approach and a new idea, frankly, about what we need to do to deal with the sandwich generation.
Another question the vice president should have been prepared for is why the crisis at the southern border has escalated under her leadership, and if Donald Trump was wrong for his plans to build a wall.
Under Donald Trump, you criticized the wall more than 50 times. You called it stupid, useless, and a medieval vanity project. Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember,
these shitbag Democrats took all the money away from him so that he couldn't build the wall. Now, this stupid bitch is going to tell you about how he didn't finish it and it doesn't work. But the reason he couldn't finish it was because of them. Take a listen.
Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on. They didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw was about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it.
No shit. We've already
People have to earn it.
You're not going by it.
And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on this? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I'm not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
I want to strengthen. When she was with the interview with Brett Baer, remember he kept saying, well, do you want
Kamala Harris
prisoners in order to be able to get sex change? And she was like, I will follow the law. So you want to be able to give prisoners sex changes in prison because it was made as some bullshit law. If you wanted to be concise about something, you would come out and say, prisoners should not be allowed to get sex changes in prison. But instead she says, I will follow the law. So when she's pretending she's strong on the border, And then he's asking her right there. He's pushing her. So you thought the wall was stupid. Now you want a wall. And her answer is basically, I will follow the law. And she goes back to being wishy-washy again, because if she says I want a wall and I want to stop immigrants from coming in, her radical left-wing base will turn on her. But if she says that I am going to do it and full throttle, then maybe she gains a couple more moderate common sense voters. And she's having an extremely hard time navigating the waters in the middle. And she can't come up with a legit answer. So it's basically all the new answers now are, I will follow the law.
And the Democrats are obsessed with Donald Trump. The Democrats have been in power for 12 out of the last 16 years, but all they want to do is blame every problem on Donald Trump. And is that because he's a genuine threat to democracy like they say he is, or because he's a threat to their power? Kamala Harris has had every opportunity to turn down the heat on the rhetoric in this campaign, but should rather convince Americans that the Republican candidate is someone we should all fear.
Do you believe Donald Trump is anti-Semitic?
I believe Donald Trump is a danger to the well-being and security of America.
Earlier in the day, Kamala Harris was speaking about comparisons being drawn between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. Commentator Alex Stein joined Power Hour to give his analysis. Joining us now is comedian Alex Stein. Alex, great to see you. Let's get straight into the comments from the woman who is no longer the favourite to win this election. Here she is.
This is a window into who Donald Trump really is, from the people who know him best, from the people who worked with him side by side in the Oval Office and in the Situation Room. And it is clear from John Kelly's words that Donald Trump is someone who, I quote, certainly falls into the general definition of fascist.
Alex, does this sound like someone who believes they can win the election because they're the best person to lead or because they have the best policies? Or actually, is it someone who will go to extreme lengths to smear their opponent?
Exactly right.
Well, I mean, obviously it's the latter. Kamala Harris will compare Trump to Hitler, which they think that what they're doing is trying to demonize Hitler. Excuse me. What they think they're doing, they're trying to demonize Donald Trump, but they're humanizing Hitler, who wanted to mass exterminate millions of people. Yeah. And Donald Trump doesn't want to do that. Donald Trump wants to save people. He didn't start any wars when he was president. So it's absolutely absurd how they use this rhetoric and compare him to the worst human being in world history, when Donald Trump loves America and he loves this country. And Kamala Harris, I cannot say the same for her. I don't think she loves America like Donald Trump does.
Well said. Kamala Harris is doing interviews now really because she has to. She can't hide anymore. And she was asked by NBC News why she's performing so poorly with men. Let's take a listen.
Right now, there is a big gender gap in this race. Fewer men support you right now than they did President Biden. Some of your allies have suggested there's sexism at play. I wonder, do you think there is sexism at play here?
Let me just tell you something. You've come to my events, and you will see there are men and women at those events, whether it be small events or events with 10,000 people.
Alex, why is she performing so badly with men?
Well, because she's untalented. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's a female. It's just that, you know, you look at her history and where she got to, you know, become the attorney general, her relationships with men. I mean, some people here in America create a narrative that she might have used her sexuality to make it. And a lot of men are probably frustrated with that because she was literally chosen as a DEI candidate because she was an African-American woman. Correct. So instead of having a meritocracy here in this country, we're choosing the second most powerful person in the country based on their skin color. So I can see why a lot of men are frustrated, especially people that think that they could never be eligible for that position because they are a man. So I think it's rightfully so that a lot of men are not on Kamala Harris's side. I'm not surprised one bit. And we kind of saw this with Hillary Clinton in 2016, but I think it's much worse with Kamala Harris.
Yeah. Let's look at the campaign funding, because what I find amazing is that Kamala Harris's campaign is starting to dive at the moment, yet her campaign has reportedly raised more than 3 times as much as Donald Trump's just in September, and her combined campaign and affiliated groups has passed the $1 billion mark. Alex, what does that tell you about the amount of money that is being raised and that is being spent and why it's just not working for Kamala Harris?
Well, it's not working for her, but here in Texas, Ted Cruz is in a tough race with Colin Allred, and Colin Allred has gotten over $11 million compared to Ted Cruz's $8.5 million from all foreign and out-of-state donors. So all these people are throwing money behind Kamala Harris. It's not necessarily going to be the difference that makes her win. So these people are doing whatever they can. This is the fourth quarter. This is her Hail Mary. And I really hope the American people show up and do not elect a woman that wasn't even elected by her own party. Remember, there was no primary. They just elected her by themselves. They didn't actually go out there and vote. There was no civic duty. People did not get to put in their opinion on whether or not she should be the presidential candidate. So I think that's made a lot of people frustrated. Then obviously her policies when it comes to Israel and Palestine and the war in Ukraine, people are getting very frustrated. So they can spend as much money as they want. It's not going to change the narrative this late in the game.
That's right. And people didn't like her when she was vice president, when Joe Biden was still running to be re-elected. And yeah, they're starting to come to the same conclusion. Now it's getting to the pointy end of this campaign. Let's look at some of the opinion pieces we're seeing come out now. Multiple outlets are writing about how the Harris campaign is just falling apart. This one from David Marcus at Fox News says, love him or hate him or ignore him, Donald Trump is who he is. And the voters know that's what they would be getting. But Kamala Harris remains an enigma, a vague promise of full and of high and hearty words, and almost a ghost. And ghosts don't win elections, and that is exactly why Kamala Harris is losing in Pennsylvania. What do you make of that assessment, Alex?
Well, Gabriella, you nailed it. I mean, Donald Trump is who he is. He's a wealthy guy, became a billionaire because he's a very shrewd businessman. But when you ask Kamala Harris about her upbringing, she just repeats the same moniker. Well, I came from a middle-class family. Well, yeah, that was a middle-class family living in Canada. So she's just full of it. And the American people know that. And that's what's so frustrating is that she is so fake. She's such a fraud. And you know, if she somehow wins, which I do not think is going to happen, this country is going to be heading in not just the wrong direction, but the country that as you know it today, we're going to go and get into multiple wars. We're going to be, our economy is going to collapse. People are not going to be able to afford a home. I mean, the middle class will be deleted if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States of America.
You know, the only person I think who's performing worse than Kamala Harris in this campaign is her running mate, and that is Tim Walz. And we just know he's been performing terribly. This is his response as to why he lost the debate.
When the grid goes down, will you be ready?
Sorry, folks, 1 second. YouTube is awful with commercials.
And one thing is I told people, I said, I'm not that great a debater. I was a school teacher, so I'm trained to answer questions. You know, that's not a good debating skill.
I told people, Alex, just how damaging has Tim Walz been to Kamala Harris's campaign?
Taking young children to China.
Well, Kamala Harris got in trouble for lying about working at McDonald's, so she had stolen Mick Valor, but he actually had stolen valor. He said that he carried weapons and fought in the Middle East when he was really just in Europe. So he's a liar. He's been caught lying multiple times. And you're right. The only worst person to Kamala Harris in this campaign is Tim Walz. And also, you know, people create the narrative that he wants to put tampons in the boys' restroom, which is true. So think how absurd that is, that he wants to spend government money to put women's supplies in the boys' restroom. I mean, he's absurd. He's untalented. And if the DNC really had any gall, or if they really cared about their people, they would have picked Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, the governor of Pennsylvania, in the most important state, but they didn't because they want to appease the pro-Palestinian crowd. So I hope that them choosing Tim Walz is the nail in the coffin of the Kamala Harris campaign.
Yeah, I think you might be right. If she's not the nail in the coffin, I think he might be. Look, former President Barack Obama, he's back in the spotlight trying to help out Kamala Harris, and this time he decided to rap for an audience.
Now notice my palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on my sweater already. Mom's spaghetti. No. I'm nervous, but on the surface I look calm and ready to drop bombs, but I keep on forgetting.
Fucking scumbag.
Alex.
So this is just they're and it's interesting they keep pulling out all these stars that are either part of the Diddy's list. Who knows if Eminem's on that? Part of the Diddy list and part of the Epstein Island one. It's like they've got info on all of these guys, and they're telling them, come out here and support Kamala, or maybe we have the FBI release your Diddy tape and show everybody what you've been up to in your spare time. So we'll move on here to we've got the allegations against more bullshit allegations against Trump. We'll go to this one. Democrats were already cheating in the election. This was in Montana, and you had a Democratic official messing with a ballot drop-off box.
Operative was allegedly caught tampering with a ballot drop box. A video shared on X shows someone approaching a ballot drop box in Glacier County, Montana. The individual can be seen placing both his hands on the drop box, stepping away for a few moments, and then placing his hands on the drop box for a second time. Crystal Cole, election administrator for Glacier County, shared concerns regarding the alleged ballot box tampering incident with the Montana Secretary of State's election unit on Sunday. Cole told the Secretary of State's office that she reached out to the man seen in the video. The Democrat Party operative said he had been sent to the ballot drop box to see how secure the box was. Cole explained, MT Dem Party did not notify the elections office. They would be sending someone to the ballot box to check how secure it was. So on camera it looks like he was tampering, sick, with the box. The individual in the video was later identified as Laszlo Gendler, a Democrat operative working for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. The committee has been working to help Democrat Senator John Tester win re-election in Montana. Richie Melby, communications director for Montana Secretary of State Christy Jacobson, said, the Glacier County election administrator contacted our office expressing serious concern over surveillance footage that appeared to show an individual tampering with a ballot box. The name of the suspect and details were turned over to Glacier County law enforcement. Melby said that while the operative wasn't able to remove the drop box, the activity was obviously highly suspicious and concerning.
Now remember, guys, the Democrats tell you that cheating doesn't happen in the elections, especially by them. You're a conspiracy theorist if you believe what I just showed you proof of, a Democratic operative messing with a drop box. So getting into more of the plan from the Democratic Party, we've got another fake woman claiming that she was groped by Donald Trump 31 years ago. Former model Stacey Williams had alleged that former President Donald Trump groped her at his New York penthouse after Jeffrey Epstein, the late financier and convicted sex offender, introduced her to him. Trump has denied the allegations. Williams, a model in the 1990s, detailed the allegations during a call on Mondays organized by Survivors for Kamala. This group is made up of more than 200 survivors of sexual, gender-based violence advocating for Vice President Kamala Harris to win the upcoming presidential election. According to The Guardian, which first reported the call, Williams alleged that Trump, then a real estate mogul, groped different parts of her body while smiling at Epstein, who later berated her. Williams said Epstein asked her after the alleged incident why she let Trump do that, which made her feel like a piece of meat. So first I'd like to know, while she was hanging out with Epstein, what exactly were you doing? Trump's national press secretary for his 2024 campaign, Caroline Leavitt, told the British newspaper these accusations made by a former activist for Barack Obama, she worked for the Obama campaign, this woman is making these claims, and announced on a Harris call 2 weeks before the election, are unequivocally false. It's obvious this fake story was contrived by the Harris campaign. Newsweek has contacted Trump's team via email outside of working hours for further comment. It also contacted Survivors for Kamala's via email. In a video published by The Guardian, the Williams said, in 1992, my agent invited me to a dinner, to a restaurant in the Upper East Side of New York, and there were other models and the usual men hangers-on at this dinner. One of the men who was sitting at the table was Jeffrey Epstein. I'd never heard anything of him, and we got to know each other. How convenient. And we talked a lot about Clinton and Gore. I enjoyed the fact that he was politically engaged and wasn't infantilizing me and talking to me about that. She said the next time I saw Jeffrey was a few months later in December of '92 at Donald Trump's Plaza Hotel Christmas party, and it became very clear that he and Donald were really, really good friends. She's trying to throw that in there, that Trump is allegedly good friends with Epstein, when that's not the case. Spent a lot of time together. After that, Jeffrey Epstein expressed a lot of interest in me, and we started seeing each other. So now she's seeing Epstein, so she warmed up quickly. When Jeffrey and I would talk, he mentioned Trump frequently. He was clearly a close friend, and they were spending a lot of time together. That's her in her younger days, when she was actually attractive. Williams, now 56, alleged that the abuse took place a few months later when she met Trump along with the Epstein at the former's home. Williams said later winter, early spring of '93, I was on a walk with Jeffrey from his brownstone on the Upper East Side down Fifth Avenue when Jeffrey looked at me and said, let's go stop by and see Trump. So we went to Trump Tower, and went up the elevator, and moments later, Trump was greeting us, and he pulled me into him and started groping me. No details about what she said he put hands all over my breasts, allegedly, my waist, my butt, and I froze. I froze because I was so deeply concerned about what was happening. Me, the person dating Jeffrey Epstein, was very concerned, because the hands were moving all over me. Yet these two men were like smiling at one another and continuing on their conversation. We, Jeffrey and I, left and got into the elevator with him, and I felt like this. He didn't look at me, he didn't speak to me, and I felt like this seething rage around him. She said his whole energy shifted, and when he got down to the sidewalk, he looked at me and started just berating me. He kept saying, "Why did you let him do that? Why did you let him put his hands all over you?" Williams said. And he made me feel so disgusting, and I remember at that moment being so utterly confused. So just to clarify for this woman, the first time that Trump ran for office, she said nothing. The second time he ran for re-election, this woman said nothing. The third time now, 4 years later, that he's attempting to run for office, 2 weeks before the election, not at the beginning when the campaigning started, 2 weeks before the election, she's decided to speak up and said, "I hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, and I got molested by Trump." Does anyone believe this bitch, that any of this stuff happened? 2 weeks before the election, and she waited like 31 years grand total, 10 years over the time that throughout this election process that she's had the opportunity to step up and say something. So more, and of course she worked for the Obama campaign, so truly a reliable person. One more scumbag stepping up and pretending that they were groped by Trump. So getting to the polls here, and I had just gotten an update. This was about 7 hours ago from Mediate. Top Democrats, including those working on Kamala Harris's presidential campaign and is a President Joe Biden's administration, reportedly believe Harris will lose the fast-approaching election between herself and former President Donald Trump, and are already starting to point fingers. According to Axios, Mike Allen and Jim Vandehei, a growing number of top Democrats tell us privately they feel Vice President Harris will lose in spite of how close the polls remain. Our reporting simply reflects scores of conversations with people close to Harris and intimately involved in swing state races, including officials inside her campaign and top Biden administration officials, wrote the pair, before citing the troubling blame game beginning to play out. Top Democrats are already starting to point fingers at who'd be more responsible for a Harris loss, President Biden for dragging his feet or Harris herself, report Allen and Vandehei, contrasting the dour mood on the left with how top Republicans in private conversations seem shockingly confident. As reasons for Democrats' pessimism, Allen and Vandehei cited Harris's struggles to crisply explain why voters should support her, as well as early voting returns in Nevada and Republican momentum in Pennsylvania. Their report comes on the heels of an NBC News story in which a senior Harris campaign official acknowledged that there has been a thought that maybe Michigan or Wisconsin will fall off, and that North Carolina, once thought of as a prime pickup opportunity for Democrats, appeared to be slipping away. So insiders for the Kamala campaign are saying it's their belief she's going to use, she's a wreck, and she has not reached out to voters in any way that is appealing to them. In the meantime, some poll info here: Trump-Harris dead in even a national poll. I showed you that with the 538, with the claims that they're dead even allegedly in several places, with just 1 in 4 saying country headed in the right direction. The economy is a top issue for 27% of voters in New York Times Siena College survey. A new poll has found former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris in a dead heat among voters, with only 1 in 4 saying that the country is heading in the right direction. Both candidates are tied with 48% of the popular vote in the New York Times Siena College survey of 2,516 likely voters nationwide between October 20th and October 23rd, which is a 2.5 margin of error. Harris led Trump nationally 49 to 46% the last time this poll was conducted in early October. Just 28% of those who responded feel the U.S. is heading in the right direction with President Biden and Harris in the White House, compared to 61% who believe it's heading in the wrong direction. So most Americans believe Biden and Harris are fucking the country up, and that's accurate. 27% of voters said the economy, including jobs and the stock market, is their most important issue in deciding their vote in November, followed by abortion immigration at 15%. When likely voters were asked who would do a better job handling the economy, voters preferred Trump by over average of 6%. That is down from the 13-point advantage Trump had over Harris the last time this poll was conducted. Harris maintains a 16-point lead over Trump when it comes to protecting abortion access, while Trump holds an 11% advantage on the topic of immigration, the poll also found. As for President Biden, only 40% of respondents said they either strongly or somewhat approve of the job he's doing in the Oval Office as administration is winding down. I don't know how anyone can approve of what Dementia Joe's been doing. He's only been screwing the country up. Biden's age of 81 was a concern among Americans earlier this year while he was still planning his re-election bid, but with just weeks to go until Election Day, the poll results show that 41% of likely voters feel that 78-year-old Trump is just too old to be an effective president. Who the fuck is thinking that? Compared to 58% who don't. So 41% of dummies think that Trump can't do it, but they do feel that Dementia Joe's doing a good job. So Trump leading in the polls. Now, this is a really interesting thing that Trump just came out with. Now he's talking about getting rid of the income tax for Americans. So Trump has already said that he's going to get rid of tax on tips for hospitality workers, people that work in restaurants, etc. Right? Now he's talking about getting rid of the excise tax as well. We as American people are way overtaxed. I think we all know that. We pay multiple taxes on everything. We pay taxes when we get our money. Then we pay taxes when we go shopping in whatever state, whatever locality we're in. So we pay taxes 2 or 3 times after getting our money, when we should be paying them once and then we should be done. But we pay tax upon tax upon tax. Trump is talking about doing a little more towards this now. I 100% agree with that. So Trump declares that the Harris campaign is imploding in tax cut focused Vegas rally, leading by so much. Let's face it, she's not doing well, Trump said Thursday during a rally in Las Vegas. Former President Donald Trump traveled to Las Vegas on Thursday evening for a Turning Point action rally where he declared that Vice President Kamala Harris' campaign is imploding in a speech to focus on tax cut plans. Harris is actually imploding if you take a look. Because look, I'm not supposed to say it, but we're leading by so much, Trump said Thursday evening in Las Vegas to cheers from the crowd. Now, we're leading by a lot in Nevada. We're leading by a lot in Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even states that are typically never in play for 50, 60, 70 years. But the fact is the states and other states, 2 big states, are in play, and they like us. But you know what? She is grossly incompetent. Let's face it, she's not doing well, Trump continued. The 45th president joined the Turning Point action rally at an arena on the University of Nevada, Las Vegas campus, where supporters such as Florida Senator Marco Rubio, Vivek Ramaswamy, and former Hawaii Rep. Tulsi Gabbard, who has become a Republican now, I hear, has addressed the crowd. Trump said during the rally that 29,000 people were inside the arena and another 29,000 people outside to fill up the place. Nevada is another key battleground state where Trump first announced earlier in the campaign cycle he would eliminate tax on tips. He again focused this Thursday speech on tax cuts, slamming the Biden-Harris for spiraling inflation while criticizing Harris for saying she would end taxes on tips after Trump's June announcement. When I said no tax on tips, remember, a month later she comes out and we'll have no tax on tips, she said. She's never said it again. You're not going to get it, he said. We're going to have no tax on tips, and she wanted to increase, and did increase the so-called tip allocation tax rate by 60%, and that's true. She was the breaking vote to make sure you went after people in the hospitality industry that go after their money for taxes. She raised your tax, then she's supposed to say no tax on tips. In other words, even after Kamala wrecked your economy with inflation, she came after you with tip income, sort of like a vulture would do. If she gets 4 more years, Kamala Harris will pick your pockets bare. That's 100% correct. Trump told the crowd if he wins next month, he will eliminate taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits, and took a poll during the rally asking for supporters to cheer which of the 3 tax cuts plans they liked the best. Cheers and applause broke out as he rattled off the 3 options, with Trump declaring that senior support for no tax on Social Security benefits received the most support. So I wanted to find the part here. So I don't know why it claimed it was going to talk about this, but it didn't. So basically, Trump has said that he's going to get rid of the income tax for everybody by increasing the tariffs of everything coming out from other countries. And I say, that's great. Go for it. So in the meantime, in wrapping up here, this is my page. If anyone wants to follow the show or follow me on X, it's a Relief Valve podcast on X. And we're slowly increasing from the left-wing purge. So here was, and I've got a couple of stories here, of RFK talking about this. This was an updated map. New Hampshire has now flipped. One pollster was showing. So you've got Maine allegedly almost going red here with a Maine +1. A Pennsylvania, a light red. And he's claiming New Hampshire did as well, but I believe right here. But it's beige, New Hampshire +4. So there's a little bit of a color shift there, but, you know, it would be interesting if it does, because it's been blue for whatever stupid reason. It's a freedom state, so I don't know why they've been blue. But that shift in Maine as well is very interesting to me. So we'll go here to RFK talking about how, you know how we talked about earlier in the show that Trump's a fascist, he's going to shift the government on you. And here's RFK talking about the new movement in the Department of Defense and what they're going to do to go after American citizens.
Well, what's interesting to me, I'll say one other thing. President Harris said today in her post, in her speech, she said that President Trump was going to turn the U.S. military against the American public and use the public to promote his agenda. How many of you think that is true? Well, what's interesting to me is that the Biden-Harris administration has done something 2 weeks ago that has never been done in American history, which is to send exactly lethal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. And technically now it's legal for the U.S. military under this directive. It will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protests because they disagree with policies in the White House. I'm not making this up. Any of you can look it up. This is a Democratic initiative. This did not come during the Trump administration. This did not come from Donald Trump. It came from the Democratic Party. And that's why I left the Democratic Party.
All right, so that was RFK talking about what I'm about to bring up to you, and that's the fascists and the Democratic Party weaponizing the military to go after American citizen protesters. So here it is. DOD secretly reauthorizes a bill that would allow intervention domestically and adds ability to use deadly physical force. This is what RFK was referring to in that video. Washington, D.C. While Democrats have seized on a comment made by former President Trump during a phone interview with Fox News about using the National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military because they can't let it happen, the Defense Department has secretly made it legal through the reissue of Directive 5240.01 to use the military against our own citizens. This is under the Democratic Party. Of course, Trump was referring to using military assets in the event of overwhelming domestic unrest, which is allowed under the Insurrection Act, according to the Brookings Institute. The Miami Herald reports that the law has been used several times throughout history. It was most recently used by President Dwight Eisenhower when he called the 104th Airborne to escort black students into a high school in Little Rock, Arkansas. That was during the time of black children were having a hard time going to school. The white administration wouldn't allow the girl to go to school. Dwight Eisenhower called in the military to escort her in. That's what they're referring to. The New York Times reported that some claim the Posse Comitatus Act, passed in 1878, makes it illegal to use military forces on U.S. soil, aside from a governor deploying the National Guard. However, the Insurrection Act supersedes that act. When Trump was elected in 2016, protests by unhinged agitators broke out across the country, and given the current temperature of the country with the violent anti-Israel and anti-American demonstrations breaking out across the country, they will likely happen on a larger scale if Trump is elected, especially since most of the violence appears to come from the political left, which is correct. He's likely letting it be known that unlike the current administration, a Trump administration will not tolerate violence. While leftists show you the shiny object in their right hand, the Trump statement they're hiding, what they're hiding and holding in their left hand, reauthorization of Directive 52401. And this guy here is showing the breakdown of that paperwork from the DOD. Defense Department, with the stroke of a pen, has quietly codified its right to deploy lethal force against its own citizens. This is not a drill. The reissuance of Directive 52401 is a declaration of intent. The military, an entity designed by external enemies, now turns its gaze inward, poised to act with deadly precision when the inevitable clash of wills erupts. This is design. They anticipate conflict, and in their anticipation, they prepare the battlefield, our streets, our homes, and our lives, and they will strike with the full force of a war machine built to crush foreign adversaries, but now aligned to dismantle internal dissent. The facade of representative government crumbles as the state arms itself, not just with weapons, but with the legal and bureaucratic tools to enact violence under the guise of order. What was once unthinkable is now written, approved, and ready to be executed. That is not preparation for defense. This is preparation for domination. Be warned, when the state moves in silence, it is because it expects resistance. Martial law was always the goal. So when the Democrats tell you that Trump's the fastest and Trump's going to send the military, this is the Democrats that are setting up Directive 5240 to take action against civilian protesters on American soil. They're the ones that are reinitiating that and making sure they can use it for the upcoming election. And the Democrats' intention is to use this to everyone that opposes them. That's what Nazis do. That's what fascists do. That's what the Democratic Party is. All the while claiming Trump is the fascist. This is why this is so important for you all to know what the Democratic Party really is. They are the party of chaos. They are the party of hurting people, fascism, and taking over this country. This is what the Democratic Party wants, and this is its goal. This is the reason it releases prisoners. This is the reason it allows a mentally ill left to riot and burn down buildings. It's because their final greatest purpose is utilizing the military to finally crush all of the chaos, crush anyone that stands in their way, and then when they're done, they will say, "We have brought you peace," as long as you fall in line under their corrupt regime and do as you're told. This is what the Democrats want. This is why, for people like myself who follow this on a regular basis, it drives me absolutely nuts to see them just blatantly lie to everyone's face. And there are people who are buying it. There are people who believe Trump's the fascist, and the Democrats are trying to save you. The Democrats are the ones that want to do all of this and are currently trying to do it, as I just showed you proof. Look up that directive for yourself, if you don't want to take my word for it. Zero Hedge reports that according to the reauthorization of Directive 5240, it would allow the U.S. military to use lethal force on the civilian population in the event of a national security emergency, signing GreedMed Info, which examined the 2016 version and the 2024 version and found disturbing changes. The outlet reported the following. As the U.S. prepares for one of the most controversial and closely watched elections in its history, a concerning update to DoD Directive 5241 has quietly been put into effect, reissued on September 27th, 2024. This directive governs the Department of Defense's DoD intelligence, activates and now includes provisions authorizing lethal force in certain circumstances when assisting civilian law enforcement. While the directive forbids assassination, it opens the door to lethal interventions under national security conditions. The report notes that while the 2016 version was primarily focused on intelligence collection and ensuring civil liberties for Americans, the 2024 version, which the Democrats have now warped and twisted it to, expanded the military's role, particularly assisting civilian law enforcement. It also authorizes lethal force under specific conditions, raising questions about its use during potential civil unrest surrounding the election. Section 3.3a 2c reads in part, Subject to paragraph 3.1, defense intelligence components may provide personnel to assist a federal department or agency, including a federal law enforcement agency or a state or local law enforcement agency, when lives are in danger, in response to a request for such assistance in accordance with the following approval authorities. Secretary of Defense approval. Secretary of Defense may approve any type of requested permissible assistance described in paragraph 3.2. The decision to approve requests for these types of permissible assistance described in paragraph 3.2 to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities are reserved to the Secretary of Defense. Provision of personnel to support response efforts for civil disturbances, which may also require presidential authorization. DoD response to chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and high-yield explosive incidents. Assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality or any situation in which is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support to civilian law enforcement officials in situations where a confrontation between civilian law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. There are some guardrails on the authorization, such as the requirement for Secretary of Defense approval, given the fervor the Biden-Harris administration has shown in pursuing even the most minor January 6th lawbreaker, right? It is beyond imagination that there were Harris were to prevail in the election and some Trump supporters to get out of hand, that the DoD would authorize deadly physical force against these protesters. This is what they're putting in place here to do. That if she were to win, or the Democrats were to win, that if any one of us that tries to go out there and protest, or even, God forbid, fight back against the cheat that happens, because there is no legitimate way Kamala can win. She is a moron of a different degree than Biden. She has no skills. She's a liar, absolutely a cheater, and she's been a DEI hire or slept her way to the top through every position she's gotten. She's completely unqualified for anything she could get. So if any of us try to resist against any of that, the Democrats want to make sure through the DoD that they can send the military against us, and the military has the right to use lethal force against us. As Green Med Info proposes, the timing of this reauthorization only 6 weeks before the 2024 election, it was issued 3 weeks ago, raises many questions, especially with concerns about election integrity, threats of civil unrest and political manipulation. Could we see military intervention in domestic affairs if civil unrest did occur, and how might this impact the election? Moreover, the recent expansion of what is considered domestic terrorism is also concerning, with people being flagged or questioning the origins of COVID-19, the efficacy of vaccines, the election integrity, as well as so-called misinformation and disinformation. The expansion of Directive 5241 raises a number of other concerns, especially where civil liberties and our rights under the U.S. Constitution are concerned, as follows. All cited by Green Med Info, this potential impact on civil liberties should alarm all of us. Number one, the right to protest. There are fears that expanded authority could suppress legitimate protests. Privacy rights. Increased military involvement in domestic intelligence gathering could infringe on privacy because they'll call it a necessity during a civil conflict or something. Due process. The military's role in law enforcement could bypass standard due process protections. Freedom of speech. The broad definition of national security threats could target individuals for their political beliefs, like all of us that are conservatives and Trump supporters. Civilian control. The expanded military role could erode civilian oversight of the military, potentially leading to a situation where the military operates with less accountability and transparency and more autonomy in domestic affairs. The military is never supposed to be the police. If you turn them into that, you're going to have a lot of problems. Other concerns that were expressed, and we're going to wrap up here, including the undermining of the posse comitatus, which we explained earlier, can already be circumvented on the Insurrection Act. The First Amendment concerns. As I mentioned above, anyone questioning the government's response to COVID-19 or the integrity of elections has been labeled potentially domestic extremists or terrorists by some federal agencies. It's feared this directive could expand these classifications into scenarios involving the use of deadly physical force. Fourth Amendment concerns. The directive allows intelligence sharing between the military and civilian law enforcement agencies under emergency conditions, raising privacy concerns and the potential for expanded surveillance, possibly under the Patriot Act. Due process for the Fifth Amendment. possible military use of force in domestic situations raises concerns about how due process protections would be maintained before potentially life-altering decisions are made. After Green Med Info dropped its original story on October 7th, a number of people tried to fact-check their information. One, John Harold, apparently did not read the new directive. Harold claimed that the DoD has always had this authority, and he's talking about the old admittance to the authority, not the new changes to the authority, claiming the language is designed to mandate authority must be given if the intelligence or equipment given to law enforcement is used and could potentially result in the use of lethal force. So the Democrats have put this into place under the Department of Defense and the Pentagon in order to take action against citizens like us who might go out into the streets and protest and riot or do even 1/4 of the things that Black Lives Matter and Antifa did. And they'll prepare to use deadly force against us should we try to do that. And that's it with a Democratic the corrupt Biden regime in office. They are the ones that are pushing for this directive to change and enhance this directive. That's the reason that they're doing it. So, and the one final thing here, just very quickly, is that this was at the time. This was yesterday. More than 13 million Americans have voted early, and just a third are Republican. But the early voting is showing Republicans up in many places. 13 million, 36% were registered Republicans, 47% were registered Democrats, with the remaining 17 being independents. 41 million Americans have requested the ability to vote early in this election. And, you know, the early election is how the Democrats cheat the most, by stuffing the ballot boxes with their extra votes to make up for loss in numbers. As the post-millennial notes, a voter breakdown shifts significantly in key battleground states. In Arizona, for instance, 44% of early voters are registered Republicans compared to 35% are registered Democrats. Similarly, in Nevada, Republicans have led Democrats 47-27 among early voters. By contrast, Rust Belt swing states like Michigan and Pennsylvania see a larger share of registered Democrats. In Michigan, 54% of early voters are Democrats, while Pennsylvania reports a significant 64% Democratic turnout among early voters. A majority of early voters are age 65 or older, and majority are female. Nearly 2/3 are casting their vote by mail rather than in person. A number of swing states where mail-in voting is especially popular have already made clear that full results will not be available on the 5th of November, which is ridiculous. You should have them the same day. You should already be counting them and should already be ready. The only reason it's going to take more time is because cheating is happening. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, for example, forbid the processing of early ballots before Election Day. So that's the time to start adding in the Democrats' extra ballots so they can cheat. All right, so thanks for everyone for tuning in today. This is my page on Twitter. Let's get to my profile. The Relief Valve Podcast on Twitter. We're rebuilding after the leftist purge before Elon took over. Please follow us on there. I put constant updates on there. Jack Sobiak saying that a suspected pedophile migrant was hanged in New York Park. Officials found him dead. That was really interesting. We've got a new updated map showing New Hampshire has flipped. JFK giving that information. I post up regular stuff all the time and give you updates. So if I'm not doing a show, you can still keep up with everything that's going on. I follow a whole bunch of political pundits, and I get all the latest news that's coming out of there. And then please like, share, subscribe, smash that subscribe button, as everyone else says. And please like, share, and support the show as well. I really appreciate this. I do this on my, I have a full-time job. I do this on my own time, and I try to get this out there and get everyone informed as best I can. All right, thanks again. And Trump is on Joe Rogan today, but that's not being released today. I'm hearing some word that the Trump Joe Rogan could be released tomorrow. If it's released tomorrow, I will do if it's 2 or 3 hours, I'll do the whole show in its entirety, and so I don't get copyrighted or hit with something, I'll have interjections or something as I go along, so it gets split up a little bit. But I'll do my best to run the Joe Rogan Trump interview in its entirety on Saturday, should it be released on Saturday. And if not, then we'll connect with it as soon as it's made available. All right? thanks everyone again. Again, like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate everyone that joins up and follows. All right, we're on YouTube, Rumble, all of that. Thanks again, and we'll see you again